Carolyn, thank you very much. It's good to be back at the CBI. I'm liking some of the changes. This stage here, very rock and roll, the sort of thing that juts out there. We shall be trying to make best use of it during the next session. In the course of preparing for this, I came across some rather interesting things. On June the 23rd, a very significant date, it was then in 2014 when George Osborne, the then Chancellor, set out his speech on a Northern powerhouse, his big political idea to rebalance the economy. London was running away from the rest of Britain and there was something that needed to be done. Exactly 2 years later, to the very day, on June the 23rd this year, Britain voted to leave the European Union, although London, of course, voted enthusiastically to remain. As Theresa May said on this platform a little earlier, the referendum in her eyes is a wake-up call. There's a need to share wealth more evenly, and we'll be getting inspiration on how to do this from JLL, from Cisco, and from the 45th Mayor of Denver. Ladies and gentlemen, go wild for our panel, please. Michael, good to see you. Chris, thank you very much. Alison, welcome. If we can start, Michael, with you, because I was reading something online, April 2016, the US News and World Report named Denver the best place to live in America. Strong jobs market, low unemployment, low crime rate, great schools. How have you had so much success in this?
Well, first of all, it's the people of Denver, and I think it's the can-do, never say die, never give up kind of attitude that exists in the city of Denver. And it's our commitment to innovation, and it's that and entrepreneurialism that has really driven the attraction to our city. And you know, when I became mayor in July of 2011, we had an unemployment rate that was almost double digit. We had, you know, cut almost to the point where we were into the marrow of the bone in terms of our budget, and we hadn't hired a police officer or a firefighter in 5 years. We were reeling from the economic recession. 5.5 years later today, because of the people who simply said we must promote a vision and commitment to innovation, to entrepreneurialism, growing our small businesses. What we have today is a creation of 70,000 new jobs in the city of Denver. 3,700 new companies have moved into the city of Denver. Our population growth has gone off the rafters. We're the #1 destination for millennials, #3 in the nation for baby boomers. Unfortunately, as a result of that, our housing has gone through the roof. But the bottom line is this. Companies have come, investment has come, our unemployment rate is now at 3% in the city of Denver, and we're continuing to grow. It's because we made a commitment to the people and a commitment to innovation and commitment to entrepreneurialism to grow our economies and to grow our way out of the recession. And to, more importantly, to say this, we will grow as a region and not just as a city. And so a lot of this has been a commitment to not just the city of Denver, but to the cities and towns that surround us.
Okay, give us some sort of insight into why all these private sector jobs have been created. What sort of sectors are they in? Which companies are creating them? And why are they doing it in Denver as opposed to elsewhere?
Well, we believe a couple things. One, get out of the way of business and have sensible regulation and a tax system that doesn't overwhelm our businesses. So we want to promote the growth. Secondly, we also believe that if the public sector leans in, when I came in, there was no vision in terms of what we wanted to do for businesses and jobs and for our economy. And I simply said, let's build this city. And we invite the entrepreneurial spirit. I came in with the attitude, I want to be the startup and small business capital of the nation. And you know what? The young entrepreneurs really took that to heart. And innovation started coming, and the more we leaned in terms of promoting small business competitions and naming small business and innovative leaders the gazelles of our economy, the more they took hold. And so we started seeing our startup tech industry grow. We started seeing more, we found an app village in our city where young people were in there in their flip-flops and shorts developing apps. We leaned in with public sector money and said, this area we want to redevelop. And when we leaned in, for example, to build our transit hub, we invested $500 million as a city. but $3 billion of private money followed. And so what we learned is that that formula works. When the public sector leans in and says this is important, the private sector will follow and say, you know what, we're on board too.
Okay, and but it's not just been about creating the right environment. Public sector money's backed this
Absolutely.
ambition up, right?
Yeah, you got to be put your skin in the game in the public sector. We don't have to, if we are the primary creator of jobs, if the public sector is the primary creator of jobs, we're in a lot of trouble. But we can certainly set the tone, and we can certainly lead the collaboration necessary to grow jobs. Okay. And that's what we try to do in Denver.
Okay, I want to bring in Alison Vincent now from Cisco. Just before we do, Alison, just to make it clear, we will open everything up to questions. If you do have any, please get on the app or put your hand up when I invite you to in a few moments' time. But don't worry, the floor will get a chance to contribute. Alison, you have set out your position on this, which is that only smart cities will thrive going forward. Spell out for us, what do you mean by smart?
Yeah, so let's take a step back. So smart cities I see as the combination of the oldest technology that we've got, which is the built environment, a community building a shelter, with the modern technology in terms of digitizing. So a smart city is really how do you go about digitizing a city? In other words, getting the most from that connectivity over that city. And when you talk about digitizing a business, you're really talking about three things. You're talking about improving productivity, you're talking about improving an employee's innovative capability, and you're talking about improving citizen experience or customer experience. And those three things also apply to a city. So if you make your city smart, you're really connecting the city and providing open access to the data from that city.
Can you give us any examples that you can point to where technology's actually had a pretty transformative event, something that we can all, I suppose, connect with?
So I'll go to an example outside of the UK first. Santander in Spain, they were a city who had a very unique ability that all of their local government decided to come together, pulled the budgets together as one entity, and they went forward to try and improve the experience in the city of Spain, that particular city in Spain. And they invested in 25,000 sensors across the city. And these are things for parking, for air quality, for water quality. And they put these sensors around the city. And ultimately, it had brilliant advantages in terms of, the main one that they got was in terms of reducing commuting times and reducing air pollution, because people were getting into the city and being able to find somewhere to park a lot smarter than they could originally.
Okay, generally speaking, how smart are Britain's cities?
British cities, we have some smart cities. We have some really brilliant examples where we're trying to do it. So Milton Keynes have got the autonomous vehicles.
Milton Keynes,
yeah.
That's the spirit.
Bristol is open, is doing stuff in terms of sharing data across a particular area within the city. I need to say this because I'm here from Cisco. So Cisco are working very actively in Manchester with Innovate UK, and we are helping to transform a corridor within Manchester and trying to see what kind of experiences we could provide in Manchester to help their citizens' experience.
Okay, Chris Ireland, in terms of where you sit at JLL, what are the bare essentials that a city needs if it's going to be successful?
Well, I think the city absolutely needs to have the right built environment to encourage people to want to come and live and work and develop there. So I think it's really important that the new buildings of today are flexible, they're innovative, they're smart buildings, they're connected to smart grids. But I think it's more than just individual buildings. If we're going to regenerate big parts of our regional cities, I think it's really important that the whole environment within that area, so the whole amenity, the whole public space is really exciting, is really vibrant. And it's the sort of space where you can get institutions coming together, interfacing with tech entrepreneurs, interfacing with business, and all coming together and working together. And the point that Alison's making is absolutely fundamental, that all new buildings and all new space in the UK and our cities is absolutely connected. And we've seen a huge disruption in retail in the UK. We've seen disruption in other areas. I think the property industry generally has been a little bit behind. And in terms of the office environment, it's been pretty staid. I think we're about to see a huge change in how we all work and live and how offices are used by companies.
And at the moment, when you speak to investors, where in Britain, which cities in Britain is there no end of appetite to invest in, and where are the parts of the country where they're harder to persuade to go?
I think at the moment, I think in a lot of the regional cities where you get that relationship between high quality academic institution or university working with tech. So if you take examples of Cambridge, the science parks around Cambridge, specialising in life science, Addenbrooke's Hospital, teaching hospital, medical science. We heard earlier on about Leicester, we heard earlier on today about Newcastle, Nissan working with the University of Newcastle in terms of battery technology. I mean, I think there's a lot of examples, but you need to find a tie to link that energy.
Sure. Carolyn, you were saying the CBI has done a lot of research on regional growth. I mean, the gap between London and the rest is enormous, isn't it? I mean, I saw something the other day about graduates, over half of Oxbridge graduates on leaving university, they all end up in London. That's where the engine, the real engine is, throwing off private sector jobs, where the start-up businesses are being created. Are you clear, hand on heart, that this is a gap that can narrow?
I completely do believe it can be. And I think you are, I will again go overseas and then come back to the UK. So, it's interesting. If you look at the example of East and West Germany and the unification, the difference in productivity between East and West Germany was double. So West was double the productivity of East. And again, as Michael was saying, the partnership between government and business was really targeted in terms of investment to bring the two together. And just, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, the gap completely closed. It really, really can be done. And just some examples that I've seen going around the country. I've been really interested by what's happening in Leeds, for example, where you've got tech companies moving out of London, trying to attract, and indeed successfully attracting, London and top graduates and keeping them there with a great quality of life around there. But interestingly, the kind of things they're talking about holding them back. There's one company, a super tech company in Leeds, said actually the biggest problem we've got is the rail link between Sheffield and Leeds. We wanted to recruit students from Sheffield. They couldn't commute, so we had to go and set up an office in Sheffield. So actually, some of our issues here are actually really about local transport and connectivity.
Michael, I don't know if you've ever taken a train between Sheffield and Leeds.
No.
Nightmare.
Absolute
nightmare.
Do not recommend it.
But transport, going back to the Denver example, Michael, how important are transport links in terms of, in terms of economic growth?
Critical. Where you have transit, typically you have solid or vibrant economic stability. And the reality is that in 2007, our region decided to invest in a $4.7 billion transit system, regional system. What we're seeing now is that a lot of our economic growth in the region...
Forgive me, Michael, what transport was this? Was bus, train?
No. When I say transit, I'm talking about train, light rail and commuter rail. And what we're talking about is 22 miles of train system in the metro region. Where we created this transit system in the region, we are now seeing economic development driving from our lease coming off of those that transit system at our transit-oriented development sites.
And how easy was it to get a project like that off the ground? Because obviously you must at some stage run into opposition.
No, it was unbelievable, unprecedented. I will tell you, first it failed once. And then 41 mayors within a region came together and unanimously decided they would support this transit system and then went out and campaigned for it so that their constituents would vote for it. And it passed 52 to 49 or something of that magnitude. It was a very slim margin, but as a result, $4.7 billion was committed to support the building of this light rail system.
And that was mostly private sector, public sector money?
Public sector money. But what you see, that transit hub I talked about is in Denver, is that kind of result. That 3 to 6 to 1 kind of public investment being the one, and then private investment overwhelmingly coming as a result of it. We are seeing, for example, Panasonic Enterprise Solutions move their North American headquarters to Denver next to a transit development site because they wanted to be that catalyst, that ripple effect. By moving there, they created this whole new innovation corridor with their presence. The Panasonic brand, is all over the world. It's global. And so that's the kind of investment that has come into Denver as a result of our commitment to that transit site.
You've had success creating jobs in Denver. That must bring challenges too. Presumably, population has grown as a result.
Absolutely. Denver will pass 700,000 residents this year. We have grown by 20% in the last 5 years.
20% in
Absolutely.
5 years.
And so you see tremendous traffic congestion, of course, and our housing, the demand on our housing market, as you can imagine, has just been overwhelming. Housing prices have gone up some 13 to 15% in Denver over the last 5 years. If you own property, that's great. If you're trying to buy or get into the market, it's a challenge. And so we've had to develop new strategies to focus on mobility as well as housing in the city of Denver.
And how have you dealt with that housing shortage? Is that I hate to obsess about this, but is it public sector money being committed into building new homes, or are you hoping the private sector will deliver the homes you think society needs?
Yeah, to some extent, again, the formula works. In 2013, I challenged the market to say, let's build 3,000 new units in the next 5 years. We called it a 3x5. That was in 2013, so it would end in 2018. We actually will finish that in 2017, 3,000 new units. Most recently, the City Council passed a proposal that I proposed to build 6,000 units, and it will cost the public $150 million to do that. And so over the next 10 years, we'll commit $150 million to build that housing. That comes from increased property taxes as well as what we call a development fee for new development that goes on into the city. Again, public sector leaning in, kind of just jumpstart the private sector's commitment. And then we've done some things like float some municipal bonds for our chronically homeless, which is an interesting concept because it's a social impact effort. And as a result, we're going to be housing for our homeless by social entrepreneurs investing in these bonds to build that housing.
Perfect. I want to throw the session open to the floor now. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We have a team of people with microphones and paddles around the room. The only thing I'd ask is before you ask your question, if you could say who you are and which organisation you represent, that would be useful. Does anyone on the floor have a question for anyone here on the panel? Come on, don't be shy. There we are, the gentleman at the front here. Brilliant.
I just wondered, do we feel like we've got the politicians in this country to do what that gentleman's done in Denver, outside of London?
Who are you? Where are you from, sir? Sorry.
I'm Simon Goodman. I'm a small business owner in London.
Small business owner in London. Carolyn, do you want to take that? Are you political support?
Ooh, I think one of the things that we are learning is how important it is to get the decisions closer to the city regions. The kind of things that really make a difference are actually quite local. There are definitely national things, around skills and education, but the kinds of investments and the tailoring, for example, of skills training or the particular kind of transit you may want to put in place, you want them to be taken locally. I think one of the things that we have started to do is to understand that, and the city deals are a really good step forward. Now we need to see them work. We need business around the table shaping what actually happens to that money, and we do need the leadership. I think that the idea of having mayors who are leaders, who are working with business, who are targeting public intervention in really careful ways. I think mostly staying out of the way. I think that's probably right. But the crowding in of private sector investment, we are in the foothills. And I think we've got some great examples. I think Manchester is a great example, actually, of where we've had good leadership, great leadership, actually. So I think we have got political will there. I think now is the time to really kickstart it to make it work even better.
Will you think at a national level or at a regional level, local government? At a regional level, because we're going to get directly elected mayors, aren't we? Or Birmingham Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool are going to get them. Alison, Chris, do you have anything to contribute on that?
Because I think it needs to be like that, because with smart cities, you're not going to get one solution that's going to match every single city. Yeah. Each city will have their own thing that they're trying to solve. Is it crime? Is it air pollution? Is it, mobility of their elderly population? They're going to have very specific things, which is very city-specific.
But do you think having a figure like a directly elected mayor, like Michael, one individual who can drive this forward? It certainly helps. So
certainly in Manchester, we've got the Manchester City Council fully engaged, the LEP engaged, and they're pulling together into one vision for what they want for that city.
Chris?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think listening to Michael here, I think there are huge lessons for us to learn in the UK in terms of devolving more powers into the regions. I think we've got one of the most centralised approaches at the moment in terms of into regional investment, and I think the one of the advantages that you get is that you get a strong mayor. He's got a vision, he's got a strategy, he's a go-to person. If somebody wants to get something done in Denver, I've only met Michael for the last 5 or 6 minutes, but I know you go to Michael and he gets something sorted. And I think that's quite a big issue for the UK. So I think we definitely need stronger regional leaders, and I think they need more clout. They need more firepower, because we're also hearing from Michael. I mean, he's initiating public expenditure, and then the private sector
spend some money, loosen
following
the
behind.
Okay, so that was an interesting statistic, Michael. £1 or $1, I'm presuming, invested, taxpayers' money invested $6 of private sector money. Is that right?
Yeah, in our transit hub, our building where everybody goes through to get on the regional system.
Does that answer your question? Anyone else from the floor? Man at the back there with a hand raised determinedly. This should be good. Who are you, please, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm Amit Mehta from Grant Thornton. Question for Michael. Politicians and leaders of councils generally have a short term in their office, but these projects require long-term thinking. So you need to get a buy-in from the whole population. Perhaps what we can learn from you is, how did you get that buy-in so that vision, because every investor wants certainty of knowing that this project is going through, it's not going to get derailed in 2 years' time. How did you get that in? And perhaps we can learn something from you on that.
Good question. Listen, I believe we overthink politics too much, and we tend to underestimate the public's ability to understand very basic concerns and opportunities. And one of the things that I try to lead my team to do is to think about this in the sense that I want you to think about it like you are the mother or the father sitting on the couch watching the news, and this problem is being explained to you. And that's the person you're trying to reach. So you want to explain it to them in a very basic, like you would explain it to anybody. Don't try to over-explain it. Don't try to under-explain it. Explain it to them very simply, and work to get their buy-in. Give you an example. When I became mayor, we had a structural problem in our finances. No matter how much I raised money, unless I was going to raise it out of the park where nobody wanted to live in my city, we were going to have this structure. We had to fix this structural problem. And it's too complicated to explain today, so I won't even go into it. But the reality is, when my team looked at it and they came to me and said, Mayor, we can go from A to B and then jump to D, kind of a zigzag to solve the problem, or we can do a straight line, which meant you got to go to the public and ask them basically to allow you to keep the taxes you're already keeping. We were rebating $100 million back to the people when we were running an $80 million structural problem. You follow the common sense there? And so they said, but you're a first-year mayor. You cannot go to the public and ask to keep their taxes. I said, but let me get this straight. The solution is we can go here to get here, or I can go straight here, right? They say, yes. Let's go explain that to the people. And that referendum passed 73% because it was a very commonsensical solution. We tend to overthink things. And so what I really believe is, if you talk about how you get people involved, explain it to them like the way it is.
President-elect Trump is very good at telling it like it is, isn't it?
Joe, I knew you were going there, but yeah.
Well, is he going to make your job improving the fortunes of Denver, which I don't think voted Trump, did it? Is he going to make your job easier?
Say who voted for Trump? What'd you say?
No, Denver, the city of Denver did not.
No, the city of Denver overwhelmingly went for Clinton.
Right.
Colorado went for Clinton as well. Listen, in the hardest of times is the time to lead. And, Clinton won the popular vote. Democracy worked. Trump won the Electoral College. The country is split. And the reality is simply, it's time for all those of us who believe we're leaders to step up and say, let's lead this country and let's make sure we stay united as the United States of America. And so, will it make my job harder? No, it says it's time for you to lead. You're the mayor, lead.
We're getting some rather interesting questions. We'll take another question from the floor in a minute. We're getting something coming through on the app. This is very exciting. Keep going, guys. So this is Raymond Lee. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Post-Brexit, he says, and where 600 smart cities will account for 65% of GDP, should we have city-to-city trade deals rather than a blanket country-to-country deal? Carolyn, that one's for you.
Well, it is an interesting question. I mean, when I was in China recently, what I was hearing time and time again was actually the provinces of China are themselves countries, and they're actually quite independent and quite autonomous. Now, whether we want to complicate our very complicated lives even further by thinking about going in that kind of direction, but I think that the logic of thinking about trade with Chinese cities and that kind of opportunity. You've got a consumer class growing in China now who love British products. And if we can find a way of reaching them, I think there are some really interesting things happening online. I think there are some really interesting new ways of reaching those markets. We may take a while to get new trade deals. My view is it will take a while. But I think one of the things that's happened as a result of the vote is that people are working out what they can do now, and actually thinking export is one of the things we can do now.
Okay. Any other questions from the floor on any other subject relating to growth and cities? Have another. Should we the lady here towards the front, please, if we can? Just here. There we go. Again, if you just tell us where you're from before you start.
Thank you, and thanks to the panel. I'm Jennifer Johnston, and I work for the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. I just wanted to ask the panel, it was 2012 shootings, Michael, in Denver, the shootings in the cinema in Colorado. How did smart cities help that at all? Are there any lessons learned that we can pick up through using smart data, smart analytics to prevent terrorism?
Use the shootings in 2012.
The cinema shootings.
Oh, the cinema. I'm sorry,
yeah.
The theater shootings. And how did smart cities help with that?
But Michael, if you could just explain a bit of background for people who weren't following.
What she's alluding to is the July shootings that occurred in the Aurora Theater, movie theater, at the premiere of the Batman, or opening night of the Batman movie, I believe it was. And we had a gentleman walk into the theater and shoot. He shot quite a few people, but I believe 12 died in the Aurora shootings. And you're asking, would have smart cities have played a different... Well, one of the things that I think technology would have assisted in that sense is we have a thing called, God, the name just walked right out of my head, Shot Spotter, where, in the city of Denver, we're putting up sound, and it's gone across the nation, kind of a sound system that allows for police to detect that a shot has occurred, a gunshot has occurred. And they're able to, within a matter of minutes, hear it as it happens, but within a matter of within a few feet, be able to determine where that bullet or the gun was fired. ShotSpotter would have helped because it would have immediately informed the police department that shots were being fired in this location, and when they would have heard it in rapid succession the way he was firing, that would have made a difference. So in terms of smart cities, that's part of the technologies and real-time delivery of information and services, not only to the people who live in Aurora or Denver, but also to the police department and law enforcement who would have been responding to that situation.
Alison, Michael, then talking about how technology can help us out. I wonder what your thoughts are about the disruptive effect of technology. I'm thinking really in terms of, technology creates jobs, it also displaces jobs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that's an enormous challenge. I always think that we've covered on ITV News the sort of discussions that are being had about Uber drivers and employment rights. While at the same time, take a back seat if the direction of travel is driverless cars. Well, actually being a taxi driver nowadays is rather an uncertain place to be. What are your thoughts about the pace at which technology is creating jobs and perhaps displacing others, and whether you think that that's about to accelerate?
Certainly, technology is exponentially increasing in terms of what it can do. And the other week I was sitting on a panel about artificial intelligence and what that will do in terms of jobs. The robots are coming, we're going to be out of our jobs. For me, it was very much a different conversation. It's going to change our jobs. I certainly think the advantage of using robotics, it will enhance your job by taking away the mundaneness of the job, but it will enable you to think more creatively. So if you're thinking about advising children not to be taxi drivers, or even airline pilots, become a commercial drone pilot, but certainly getting them to think more about their creative skills, helping them to think about, okay, what are these unique things that I can do as a human that artificial superintelligence won't ever get to? How do I build that in their skills force to actually help them cope with where technology is going and also create new experiences, which of course a smart city is all about, creating these new experiences for citizens.
Sure. I suppose what I'm getting at is that on the one hand, technology can help make cities more productive places, but equally it's doing something potentially to the skills base, which is challenging the aim of sharing wealth more evenly. If you end up with if you don't have a skill and don't have a job, you may end up in a position where you don't have a job.
I think we need to take this on a global platform. I think at the start, Caroline was talking about, it's not Manchester versus somewhere else, it's the UK versus the rest of the world, essentially. And I think if we don't apply technology in the UK, other cities in the world will. So I think we just need to try and deal with the questions of skills as they come along.
We have time for one more question from the floor, and we shall take it from the gentleman there with the shirt. That's the man with his hand up still. There we go. Where are you from, please?
Thank you. My name's Ian Ankers. I work for a housing organisation called Bolton at Home from Manchester. So pleased to hear what you've been saying about the great things. And I agree with everything that's been said. Manchester's striding forward. So you're all welcome to come and have a look at what we do up there. It's good up north. But on a serious note, for the panel, this is a question for the panel in general, I think. Some of you may have been aware of a publication that came out yesterday called The Brain Gain, where I'm part of a consortium of housing providers who produced a report highlighting that 31,000 graduates left the north over the last decade to head south. And I think city leaders face a dual challenge, one being the retention of graduates and investing in the high-tech industries and creating the city vibe, as it were, that keeps graduates. And we need to do much more of that because we're showing a deficit in the north. But secondly, on the theme of new technologies and new industries, we also have to recognise, don't we, as civic leaders, that there are an awful lot of our citizens who are living in the low-wage, low-skill economy. The JAMS is the acronym now for them. They're just about managing, and those underneath them, the low-skilled, unemployed workforce that are still out there, often voting Brexit, frankly, and that's a challenge to us. So has the panel any solutions to either end of the spectrum, retaining graduates, or what are we going to do to engage a low-skill, low-education workforce?
Carolyn, do you want to start with that? We'll move along the panel. Everyone will end with Michael and see what challenges you've had in Denver. But
yeah, I think the two challenges are absolutely connected. It's how we create really high productivity, high skill, high wage cities, city regions around the UK. And they, in turn, then keep the students there. I haven't seen the report yesterday, but I've seen others, and it's a really striking thing, the fact that students go north and come south again. Newcastle is actually doing well. Newcastle has created, a brilliant kind of ecosystem. And one of the questions that is quite interesting is we can often find the first job for graduates, but the second job isn't there. So it is about getting that ecosystem of, frankly, I would say big companies and small companies. There's a lot of talk about entrepreneurs, fantastic entrepreneurs and scale-ups. Actually, big companies can help anchor supply chains and drive productivity through a region. But it is about kickstarting that ecosystem that then keeps the graduates there, drives productivity, and I agree with Alison. I think, if we adopt the new technologies, we will create the new jobs for people, and the jams, we will create those jobs.
Alison, out of interest, where were you at university? You've ended up working in the south predominantly, haven't you?
Yeah, I was at London University of Illinois.
Okay.
Both my brother and sisters went to Nottingham, though, and they're still up north.
And they're still up north, there we are. Okay, your thoughts?
Yeah, so certainly I think on retaining the university individuals in their towns, I think we need to help in terms of the innovation hubs, because I do know that's probably something you want to talk about, but certainly Cisco, for instance, have innovation hubs in London, but we're just realising that's not enough. So we're now investing in Manchester because we happen to be investing in the city, but larger companies, I think, could do that kind of thing, to invest money outside of the London capital, to provide really exciting spaces and to encourage graduates not necessarily to go into a large corporate, but to come up with an idea themselves. Because this is brand new technology, they could come up with their own business idea and create their first business. So almost like an entrepreneur rather than go to a large company.
Chris, does it surprise you that so many graduates seem to head south?
Yeah, I think in the UK we're very fortunate with a world-class university system, and that's not just in London, it's just not Oxbridge. So I think we're attracting the graduates into the regions, and the challenge is to keep them there. And I think business has got to play a big part in offering long-term sustainable careers in the regions. But I think the built environment, making places really exciting places to live and work, and lots of amenity. And you just why come to London when you've got so much going from Manchester, and you've got technology, and you've got job creation, and you've got a career. So I think it's a combination of all of those.
Okay. Michael, presumably Denver is draining brains from elsewhere.
But you know what? But you want to sustain them, right? And I think Carolyn hit it out the park when she said you have to have an ecosystem. I believe that the great cities of the 21st century will have that ecosystem where you are constantly, continuously challenging and training your workforce for the 21st century. Those folks who are undereducated, underemployed, can be retrained pretty easily, quite frankly, to be more competitive in the 21st century. And those of us who build that system up and the expectations within our ecosystem, our economy, are going to be those that are going to be better prepared solidly to compete in the 21st century.
Can you give some examples in Denver what you've done on that?
No, absolutely. One of the things we did was the city of Denver, is like most cities around the country, received money from the federal government to train our workforce. Typically, the old motto is you come in, we help you build your resume, and then we go online and help you find a job. The reality is that 75, and by 2020, 75% of all jobs will require some form of certification or degree in the United States. And we recognize that our economy is growing with these new tech jobs, programming, coding, all those things necessary to compete in the 21st century. What we did was scrap that old model completely. The entire staff, over 100 people, lost their jobs in our workforce area because we wanted to get into partnering with our community colleges, with our universities, and with the private sector to train those who are most challenged in the employment market to be ready to compete in the 21st century. Give them the necessary skills, help them attain those skills so they can compete. Now, those folks went on and got other jobs within the city and other parts of the city, outside of city government. But the reality is we're now better prepared to train the workforce of the 21st century in partnership with the folks who are going to be hiring them. That is higher efficacy and effectiveness in making sure people get placed and have sustainable, gainful employment for the rest of their lives.
Okay. Now, no one, I don't think, would argue against the idea of sharing wealth more generally. Rebalancing the British economy is a long-term project. It will take years. In Denver, interestingly, ambition has been matched with public money. On Wednesday, we'll find out if the Chancellor is about to do what Michael has done and lean in.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, big warm round of applause, please, for the panel and their contributions tonight. Chris Island from JLL, Alison Vincent from Cisco, and Michael Hancock, the Mayor of Denver. And Carolyn Fairbairn, of course, Director-General of the CBI.